Before they had sexual intercourse with these women, they lusted.
All right, let me get the word right quick. Let's get locked in.
I don't know what your perspective on Genesis chapter 6 is, but have you ever thought about it like this? This video is from the Blurry Creatures podcast. They have a pretty large following in the Christian space, and they also get those nasty emails from pastors all over the place because they have conversations like this one specifically about Genesis chapter 6. So I'm going to use this as a viewer discretion if you are under the age of 18 to check with your parents or pastor, youth pastor, to make sure that you are ready to handle a conversation around something like Genesis chapter 6, because it can get a little conspiratorial in some ways. Either way, it's a discussion because it's something that is inside our Bible that we read every day, and we kind of skip over it. So what if we talked about it? I'm going to skip a little bit of the video because sometimes they're talking about the book of Enoch, which obviously is not the Bible, and it's not something that I've read before and I'm not familiar with, so I won't put it on this video. If you're new to the channel, check this out. This is Locked In Christians. We like to go deep into the Bible as we grow in our faith. We also like to explore and see some of these things that the Lord has been trying to show us. Thank you for joining us, and do that YouTube thing if you want to see more of these videos. All right, let's get locked in.
Now, that's an important distinction, because those who say, well, they just materialized with flesh, I think that they would say, yeah, they can lust after they have flesh, but the problem is that they lusted first. So here's a question. Lust is a sexual impulse, and the only reason you have that impulse is because of your biology. Yeah. In the ancient times, a king would have a harem, and he would appoint a male, to caretake that harem. But what would he do to that male first?
It's a eunuch.
That's right. He would make him a eunuch. He would cut off his manhood precisely so that person could not, what? Lust after his wives and his concubines. So
also, if you haven't read Genesis chapter 6, stop this video right here, because none of this will make sense to you at all. Go read it right quick, catch up, press play, and join us again exactly where we stopped, because it's just going to make way more sense after you read it for yourself.
What I'm trying to say here, I'm trying to do it very delicately, is that if angels are lusting after women first, before they descend to the earth, that means that they have the equipment, okay? They have the biology.
He tried to hold a straight face when he said they got the equipment. What? I ain't never heard about angels talk like this. Amen.
How does a spiritual being know lust if they don't have a body? And that's the first point of contention here. It's what I call the first cause of the defection of the Watchers. They lusted, they burned with sexual desire for human women. Now, there's two things we can infer from this. A, we can infer that they have the biology that would be appropriate for the sexual impulse even to be felt. They have manhood of some kind, let's say. And B,
hey, he can't hold it anymore. So what are you saying? Which at first is kind of shocking, but if angels can lust after women, which we see in Genesis chapter 6, that would mean they have some sort of biology to allow them to feel that emotion of lust. I think there's a case for that argument, but a lot of people already assume that angels have wings and they shapeshift into regular human beings to have those parts. So there's arguments on multiple sides of this. So hold on to this take.
Yeah. And B, they have the capacity to not only engage in intercourse, but to procreate with human beings. So what does that tell us about these creatures, about these beings? It tells us that they are reproductively compatible with us.
And they have genetic material that
they must have some kind of genetic material.
Is that lust a sin? And where are they lusting? Are they lusting in heaven?
So he's saying that angels are compatible with human beings, according to Genesis chapter 6. If you have your Bibles on you, Genesis is the first book. So if you can't find it, I can't help you, big dog. So right here in Genesis chapter 6, specifically verse 4, the Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came in to the daughters of man, and they bore children to them. That sentence is a PG-13 way of saying that the sons of God, aka these angels that left their post in heaven, procreated with women and had children with them. So he's not pulling it out of thin air. It's right there. It's in our Bible.
Well, they're lusting in heaven because at the beginning, the book of Watchers opens up. It's actually in chapter 6. It opens up with some prophetic content that's relevant to us living at the end of the age, and then the narrative, the story begins in chapter 6, just like that's alluded to in Genesis 6. And I just read the verses that the Watchers, they were looking down. This is what it says in Genesis 6, and this is what it says in Enoch chapter 6, that the Watchers are looking at the children, the daughters of men. They're observing them, and they're burning with lust for them. Again, the Genesis account says that they saw that they were comely, which means beautiful.
My version just skips and just says that when the sons of God came into the daughters of man, which is another word of procreating, you can clearly see that there's a lot of translations for this specific sentence to mean something. It just feels like we're missing a couple of pages, or we're missing background to this story, because clearly the author is referencing a story that the audience is well aware of. It feels kind of random to just bring up Nephilim in the middle of Genesis. That's just me, though.
So the Watchers are lusting. Not only are they lusting, they come up with this plan that they're going to descend to the earth. They know that this is going to be a great offense against the King of Heaven. This is going to amount to a severe transgression. So they know that what they're about to do is a great sin, and they have three things in mind, and two of those things are explicit in the text, and the other thing is, the third one is implicit. The first two are they want to copulate with these women. They want to take them as wives and copulate with them. And the second thing is they want to, through these wives, procreate offspring. They want to have families.
You think they know?
They know what?
Do you think they know that is it just the lust and they just want to go through it?
Oh no,
they
say
actually know?
it says as much in the book of Enoch,
Yeah.
that they want to take the women as wives and they want to create offspring. They want to procreate with them. And then the third thing, as I said, isn't explicit in the text, but it can be inferred. There's a reason why they want these hybrid offspring.
Yeah.
And the inference is that they want dominion of the earth. And that's what I write about in my book, Birthright. These things are undeniable, okay? You cannot lust after a human woman if you don't have some kind of biology, if you cannot feel the impetus, the sexual impulse. And so all of these theories about, well, they were spiritual beings and then they took on flesh, or there's another theory out there that they inhabit.
Have y'all ever heard that theory, actually? Because I grew up in a Baptist church in North Carolina, and they really do say that. They say, oh, angels take on flesh. They're like spiritual beings. But the way the Bible describes angels is not very straightforward as some type of spiritual beings. They have bodies and they travel, they move, they eat and drink.
Inhabited the bodies of men, other men, and like almost like demon possession, and then through these men they copulated with the women. But all of these theories and any other that can be offered must account for the first cause, namely the Watchers lusted in heaven. Lusted
Yeah,
after the
maybe they
daughters
have an
of men.
upgraded version of a human body, but I think what the problem isn't that really the Enoch. It's that it explodes your concept of when did sin enter the world? What is sin? Let's view this. Let's go back a little bit. Let's say they're standing on the fields of heaven, looking over the edge, right? They're out of the house. They're on the edge, and they're looking down, and they're having a sinful moment in heaven, which is a very hard idea. For Christians
true.
they can't connect these two because they're like, no, there is no sin in heaven.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But how did Lucifer?
Obviously, we
sin
don't
in
understand heaven.
Now, this brings up a lot of debate, and I'm sure if you ask 5 pastors, you're probably going to get 5 different answers on this part, because a lot of us growing up would probably assume there is no sin in heaven. I mean, we think there is no pain, there's no suffering, there's no violence, but The Bible literally says opposite. Jesus himself says the kingdom of heaven suffers from violence and the violent take it by force. Jesus himself saying that there's violence in heaven. Now we see here in Genesis chapter 6 that there are these angels looking down on earth and lusting after the women. So they are sinning in heaven, meaning that there is sin in heaven, technically. But the counter argument is that perhaps they took on flesh and then they were able to sin. There's multiple angles at this, and I can only draw from the Southern Baptist in me, but what do you guys know? Like, say it in the comments, but what are you guys' interpretation of angels from your denomination, how you grew up?
We have. I think that we have in some respects, we have a very medieval view of the biblical content. We have these ideas that have been ingrained in us that are not necessarily textually justified. Even if we're just having a conversation about Genesis 6 right now, we have the same problem. See, because the angels of heaven are desiring human women. They want to take them as wives. So
they're having their own Eden moment. They're having their own temptation.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and that is, we always think sin entered the world at one specific time. It's one specific event, and human beings are, that is the ultimate problem for humanity. It's just that garden. That's it. You talk to guys like Heiser, and he says there's multiple things going on, but we have to say, like, Lucifer was that the original angelic sin? Was his jealousy, him wanting to...
He defected from the kingdom, and that was a big deal.
And in my opinion, that happened a long time before the Watchers' defection.
Yeah.
So I think...
What does that say about heaven, right? You have this being in heaven having this
I think
free will
to
moment.
your point, I think that, like, that's for a lot of folks, the idea of angelic free will is a hard one. Even though we know there's rebellions in heaven, it should be like part and parcel. I feel like the idea that there is this, that angels have free will is even hard for a lot of Christians, right? Because I do believe what you say is true, that, like, we have a lot of medieval thinking about sort of the operation, if you will, or the way things work.
Angels have to have free will. If Lucifer was able to defect and leave his post and literally want to take the throne for himself, the Bible isn't sugarcoating what happened in heaven. It's saying it straight up. If Lucifer can go for the throne, then he's done that on his own free will.
In heaven. I think that's a hard one, right? Like, what other implications does that have if angels have free will?
Well, I would expect angels to have free will. From my worldview, I believe that the human species, that human beings are the younger sibling of the sons of God in heaven. We were supposed to be the sons of God on earth. Adam was a son of God, according to the genealogy of Jesus of Nazareth. He was a son of God. Well, there's these other son of gods that clearly pre-exist Adam. They're referred to as the morning stars. They're singing together and shouting for joy. The sons of God are shouting for joy. The morning stars are singing together
in Job.
As the foundations of the earth are being laid.
Did you guys know that? Job is telling us the angels were singing in glory when the earth was being formed, which would insinuate that they were there before the earth was formed. I never even thought about it like that.
So that is a statement of angelic pre-existence. They pre-exist us.
And they have emotions, and they have feelings, and they have thoughts, and their excitement.
And they can lust.
And they can lust. They make music. They're creative. See, you have all these trendy pastors here in America who say, human beings are different because we're creative. We have free will. Yeah. We are sentient beings. Why are they excluding angels? Why? What gives them the justification? What scripture justifies the statement that they are not like us, that we are somehow more special than angels, and that we are alone made in the image of God, that exclusively mankind is made in the image of God, and we're so special because we're creative, and we have the same kind of sentient construct as God, and that makes us unique. Show me in the Bible where that is ever said or even alluded to in any way. It's not. In fact, the opposite is true. Angels do everything that we do. Everything. We see them doing everything in the Bible, in both the historical narrative and the prophetic context. Angels are singing, they're making music, they're eating, they're drinking, they're making merry, they're celebrating, they're doing very dastardly things on the earth. They're obviously exceedingly emotional creatures, exceedingly emotional. and obviously also highly intelligent.
Right.
And
I'm just gonna let him cook right there. He's saying a lot about the angels that is from the Bible, not from any other text or anything, but this is what the Bible says about these angels. They do all of these things that we do. So there has to be some type of resemblance to our biology.
I would say in possession of advanced technology. So we're looking at a civilization here, and this is the problem. We as Christians living in the 21st century.
Hey, he just said angels are in possession of advanced technology. I'm gonna have to let him cook on this one.
We approach the scriptures like people living in the Bronze Age or the Iron Age or in the 13th century, in the medieval times. And we don't feel like we are allowed to approach the same stories, to approach this content as a modern thinker. But I think I'm entitled to approach this content as a modern thinker. So when I read about angels in the biblical narrative, when I see everything they're doing, what my mind does is it says civilization. It doesn't say the spiritual realm or the supernatural realm. It says rather civilization. This is a civilization. Everything we do, they do. And
or the inverse of that, because if we come after.
This one's tough. The first time I've heard him speak about the angels and the kingdom of heaven being a civilization, I was like, why have I never thought about it like this? Jesus says it directly, but why do we never think about the kingdom of heaven as a civilization? He makes a good point. There's angels eating and drinking, they're making music, they're creative, they're worshiping, they have jobs, they can leave their jobs, they can come to earth and defect and live here permanently, they can rebel. It sounds like a civilization. That was the wrapping up of part 1 for our Genesis chapter 6 with Blurry Creatures podcast review. And I just want to tell you guys, this is some exciting stuff. So if you are in that chapter of your faith walk, which is exciting, and you're starting to dig in a little bit deeper on some of the meanings of these passages that we read over a little bit quickly in our churches, and if you ask 5 pastors, you're probably going to get 5 different interpretations on what does this mean. It's exciting to get different perspectives, but ultimately other books that are thrown around in these videos, like the book of Enoch, you got to be super careful. Make sure you have the right information on what these books entail. Talk to a pastor, talk to a youth pastor, talk to your parents, and let them know that you're interested in reading something like this, because you need some guidance to make sure that your faith is strong enough to be able to handle that type of doctrine. Paul warns us against reading or being involved with doctrines like that. So I'm always careful on my end not to get involved, and I don't want to encourage anybody else of getting themselves involved into those type of doctrine that could lead you astray in your faith. I'm only gonna rely on the Bible and only use that as a source. Anywho, I'll see you guys on part 2. We're gonna break down a little bit more of this. You're not gonna want to miss this. Trust me. Like, subscribe, do that.
The name is Tango Shepherd. Man, right now more positive. Yes, the Lord will bless me. That's why my verse not nasty. The devil tryna chase me, still it not gonna catch me, because my family bless me. They always armed and ready.